You're watching Rock and Roll Rugby. Welcome back. And guys, firstly, let me just start. This video is all about new up and coming Prodigy players. I would like to call them Prodigy players because I think there is a big possibility that some of these guys are gonna become big names in the next few years. So we'll have a look at a few, mainly from the All Blacks, the Springboks, and Wallabies. But I have to first say I have to just admit and probably apologize to All Black fans and just my last reaction to the highlights of the game between Fiji and All Blacks. I watched that game again, and I do have to say that I specifically wanted to go watch the game again because I felt it was a bit harsh on it. And I have to say there's not that Razor can't take anything out of this game. We have to say there is things that Razor will take out of his game. The things that he will take out of his game, I think, is mainly, seeing the influence that Beauden Barrett's got with DMAC on the field. And then, looking at guys like Proctor, a guy like that now has got to start being looked at on the bench and maybe even starting some games in the Rugby Championship. Because let's be honest, Rico Ioane has been a bit off. It's not that he's been doing anything really wrong, but he's also not been great. And, having two strong midfield players in the likes of a Proctor and a Geordie Barrett, I think could be an exciting prospect. If that will be the case, I don't know in the future. Another guy that I have to say, I didn't mention enough of these guys because I was so caught up in just the looseness of the play. And, a lot of that just caught, it just didn't feel to me like a real test match. I will stand by that. I'll tell you why in a minute. But I didn't talk enough about players. So we have to talk about a Caleb Clark. I mean, again, like this guy is not like a young prodigy. He's had that thing about him, that stigma about him that he was going to be great. He's in with tough competition with Mark Talia. But I have to say, he's really putting up his hand and saying, guys, consider me. And he's got to be there and thereabout in that mix for that team. And as injuries happen, I think he's got a good shot of getting into the team. Don't forget, of course, a lot of players back. A Will Jordan is back. So you can't forget that a Will Jordan will now get back into that mix. And that could change the whole dynamics there in that back line, because Will Jordan plays a big role in that back line as well. Other guys that I have to say was really good watching the game again. Wallace Satiti, he's carrying, and just his overall hard work rate that he was putting in. Satiti, for me, Blackadder, come on, really, Blackadder is not in form at the moment. We can't go on what the guy was. He's just not that anymore. I just don't feel he's a strong enough carrier to be an All Black at the moment. And you've got Satiti there. You've got Sam Cane that plays hell of a hard and is a strong carrier. He's coming back. That's more experience. And then you've got TJ Perinaro also back. So, just looking at those loose forwards, you have to start saying that now with Cane coming in, Wallace Satiti putting up his name like that, you have to really start asking questions around the likes of a Blackadder in that mix. Wings is tough, like going back to wings with Reese has had a pretty good season, and that's one call where maybe Razor going back to Savu Reese was a good call because he's been really good, so I think he'll be in the mix there. But yeah, I mean, for the rest of those wingers, I think it's pretty solid, the guys that'll be there. A Mark Talia for me is always going to have to be a starter, but now you have a Caleb Clark from the bench. Otherwise, kind of been a bit disappointing to me. It's not what I've expected. And then I have to say, now you start looking at getting Will Jordan in there and then Beauden Barrett. I have to start also saying, where does Perifetta fit in and how much game time will he get? And then going onto your fly-offs, Mackenzie's definitely going to be your guy there. The question why Perifetta was always there is because of having that kind of utility. But I do have to say, because Will Jordan is not that much of a fly-off, although he can play it. I think having Bodie there is important. Then from a forwards perspective, we've spoken about the loose forwards. Guys, still, I think for the All Blacks, really, on their locks positions, I just don't feel that there's something missing there, guys. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it is. But, Vai was good. He had some good breaks and whatever, but the main things, the main job from these locks is to be good at the lineouts, and they're not at the moment. Yeah, Scott Barrett will be there. He'll be captain. And then going to the forward pack, like the forward pack really was good. The young guys coming up, you know, George Bell, you know, Tossie, those guys coming up was really pretty good on the day, you know. I felt that putting up their hand, and I think from a forwards perspective, that front pack is looking good. There's good depth there. And then from a scrum half perspective is probably where, you know, I feel that the All Blacks at the moment have got so much talent coming up with the likes of Cortez Ratima, and then of course also Noah Hotham, which is both like, sure, I didn't realize how good Hotham is. And for Hotham to come in, you know, after Ratima, that kind of concussion tackle was quite a rough one. You have to feel that, wow, okay, there is some depth there. So really just a concern for me when I look at the All Blacks around their locks and their lineouts, because their lineouts, there's still problems there, guys. Scrums are looking good. Rolling mauls, basically a product from your lineouts, not looking good. And if you go look at South Africa and Australia, they both have good lineouts at the moment with good rolling mauls. And if you even look at Argentina, you know, don't write them off. They're pretty good at those areas. And I think that is a place where I think the All Blacks are going to be lacking. And I think, again, now let's write off this Fiji game as exhibition game. It was definitely loose. I can compare it to the games that I watch where Argentina played, even against France with that new team that they put up. It was very loose. The game against Uruguay now looked like a practice session as well. It's just games that I watch and I'm like, I just love test rugby, guys. I love some kind of competition. It just looked too loose to me. And even though I'm saying, yeah, but it's always going to be like that against the teams that's not as good. If you go watch the game between Australia and Georgia, that was a test match. Georgia, I reckon Georgia could actually beat Wales at the moment in the form they're in. Man, how good is that team? If you just look at some of those players, that Hashvili and the other wing, and that fly-off, Makava, I mean, how good was that guy? He was like ripping balls away from the Australians. Really, really good player. A good team. You know, they matched up front with the Wallabies in the scrums. But let's not go too much into that game. But the point I'm trying to make, even the Portugal game, some of the stuff that Portugal did and the heart they play with and the type of running, it both felt like test matches to me. The Springbok one, granted that the Springboks was playing 14 versus 15 men because they lost that high tackle of Andre Estres and they lost that player early and they were playing with one red card, one player less for 70 minutes of the game, and a guy like Lucanio had to cover both centers, which he did outstandingly well, thinking they were only, if you think that whole game they played with 14 men, and they were still able, guys, to beat Portugal in the 60s. You know, maybe Portugal put a bit more points on the board than the Fijians. But I just felt that there is definitely some aspects of the All Black team still lacking, where I'm seeing a lot more form coming through with the Wallabies and form coming through the Springboks. The Wallabies, I got to tell you guys, you know, what Joe Schmidt's doing with this team, guys, I have huge respect what he's done with this team. He's gotten the right mix in there. I mean, Fraser McWright and the type of game that guy's playing at the moment, what a game. And I mean, guys like Nick Frost, how good has he been playing, you know, and who's the other guy, Angus Blythe. Those guys on the locks are standing out, and the lineouts look good. Their rolling mauls look good, and the moves that they're doing from their lineouts, the little peel arounds and the runs. Now, people said, oh, it's going to take forever to fix Australian rugby because Eddie Jones was playing this narrative that, it's Australian rugby and they don't have the players, everyone's going to league and all of these things. It was all excuses in the end, guys. Because you see what a good coach does. You know, Joe Schmidt came in, he was not looking for excuses. He got that right mix in the team, you know. If you look at just the mix now and how Valentini is starting to really also look in form again there with McWright. I mean, Valentini had a phenomenal game as well. And then Ben Donaldson back, you know, on 10. And just Patsami with Ikitau there on the centers just seems to work. And I can't fault them. Maybe on their defense in the wider channels, they still have some questions to answer, just like the Springboks have. But generally set plays from an attack point of view, set plays, they're so good around the lineouts, and some of those runs that they do, I think they're the most innovative at the moment for me from all the teams in the lineout. And let me tell you, don't write off the Wallabies in this Rugby Championship, because Joe Smith have taken them from literally not really much to a brilliant team now. You can say, you crazy, brilliant team. They're looking good, guys. This team looks like a team that can be competing in the top 5 in the world right now. That's my opinion. Springboks don't tour well to Australia. We'll go more into that in another video. I don't want to sidetrack too much because this one is really about upcoming players. But I got to tell you, like, really, really, when I'm looking at it, do not discredit Australia at the moment. This is not the team that played a year and 2 years ago. And even then, they still did pretty well in the Rugby Championships, these better slow cups. They're such a competitive team, and they're a different team now. And with South Africa touring there, not always touring very well in Australia, we might see something crazy happen in these first games, And even for the All Blacks, there's things missing there, guys. There's stuff not firing fully. And it's all got to do with this line-out and set piece type of thing, especially line-outs, rolling mauls. That doesn't mean they're going to lose these games because they'll play at home. But I'm not seeing them at the best they can be, although I'm starting to see Australia get to the best. The A team of the Springboks are starting to look like the first choice team. They're starting to look like a team that's really finding form. All Blacks are one of the best in the world when it comes to broken play. But at the moment, it feels a lot of broken play, and for me, not enough set piece, and just don't feel tight enough. It feels like they're not protecting the ball quite enough, I would almost say in this video, if you talk about respect for the ball, holding on to possession, it is quite important. And that will be my switching point to the Springboks. I watched the game from the Springboks, and again, granted, they had one player go off really early, a red card, and upgraded. They are so strict at the moment, the referees, when it comes to these things. So no excuses. But, I mean, if you go look there, 14 men on the field, it was a different game for the Springboks, because in that midfield on the back line, they had to, Lucanio Arm had to cover both areas. Kurtley Aronson, Mapimpi had to close in. It really made things a lot harder for them. And let me tell you, if that was a 15-man team, playing with Portugal, you could have put another 20 to 30 points on the board. So that tells you that the Springboks are in pretty decent form. I did still see a lot of set-piece play, but with the Springboks, I think they're fine in their scrums. I think they're pretty good in their lineouts. Rolling mauls are looking good. Their backline's looking pretty good. Their defense is pretty good if you think they were playing with 14 men against Portugal and still defended that well. The problem for me of the Springboks is the respect for the ball, holding on to the ball. And I think it's something that maybe Tony Brown's bringing in, that All Black flair of playing in the offload. So I often see players being tackled, like Argeus Snyman. RG Snyman was one of the biggest ones for me there. That's a problem, where when he gets tackled, he tries to just fling balls up. Now, sometimes it sticks to someone's hand, but often just throwing balls away. And it just makes the whole structured play unstructured again. So again there, I think them often looking to have that in the tackle, the last pop-up pass or whatever, not getting that right. They don't definitely not have the abilities of the All Blacks to keep the ball alive like that. And I think it's something in the coaching that's being coached to say, keep the ball alive as much as possible. But at this point, I think the Springboks need to look at that, because it will cost them come this Rugby Championship, just because of sometimes be careful. If you're not 100% sure you're going to get that offload into the hands that you need it to go to, maybe just hold on and let them clean, It's just something that I'm seeing for me from the Springboks is quite often just not holding on to securing ball and holding on to ball, and kind of losing possession quite often. And you're like, they were in their attacking half, and you think they've got to convert into points here, and they don't. And I've seen this this pattern go on with the island games as well, where they often have possession, and then either through silly pop-up pass or something silly, or knock-on or something, losing the ball instead of holding, playing phases, forcing the penalty and getting the scoreboard pressure, which they were really good at before. And it's something that I just see lacking at the moment, especially obviously this weekend with all the new caps in that team. A lot of those guys lacking a bit in just holding on to possession and being over eager. Now, it's all understanding, but guys, there is little time for these teams, and when the competition starts heating up, they are going to feel this. And I almost have to say the Australians look the best to me at the moment at holding on to ball and playing more patient type rugby. And as Joe Smith is definitely changing their approach there. Just some of the up-and-coming players from the Springboks after this weekend and building up to this, guys. I have to say to Jan-Hendrik Wessels, it's a guy playing prop. He can play loose head, he can play tight head, he can play hooker, and he can play flank. Now, he's at the moment picked as a prop. But this is what the Springboks want, because they like to play 7-1 splits, 6-2 splits. They want that, utility player. So if they lose someone, there's always someone else that they can throw in there and they can play more of their combinations. So the more the Springboks get, utility players, the more they'll be in favour for selection with the Springboks. It's just going to be the future of Springbok rugby, that they'll try and pick on utility. Johan Grobelaar had a decent game as well. The hooker, also a new guy in. And then Salman Murad. Now, this guy right through school, he was the captain. He's been the captain of his teams right through to the Stormers. He's been captain. Now also playing, was captain in the game against Portugal. This is a rising star, guys. I wouldn't say prodigy, but a rising star. And again, that's another lock coming for the Springboks. So a lot of talent there. Then looking at just your loose trio, I thought Ivan Roos would be really good. He's played a few games. A bit disappointing, when he had the ball, not really good. Elrich Lowe, a guy from the Bulls, also not good. Ben Jason Dixon. Remember this name, guys. Ben Jason Dixon. He plays flanker. This guy at the moment have to start being considered, looking at the options they've got there. I don't think a Visa is all that good anymore. A Marcus van Staden, they're just there and they're not doing much wrong, but they're doing carries, but they're not making grounds. This Ben Jason Dixon, as you can see, it's a young man coming. He's tenacity, that I'm seeing on the field, and the meters that he made. He's going to be really good for the Springboks. Watch him in the Rugby Championship. I can tell you guys now, I don't want to go on about this too long, but this guy called Sasha Feinberg Mongazulu. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of this guy. If you're a Springbok supporter, you would have already becoming a huge star. Young guy, I think 23 or something. But boy, is this guy playing with confidence, and has he got some skill. You just see the coaching staff laughing quite often, being flabbergasted by the things that Sasha Feinberg Mongazulu is pulling off in these games. And he did it against Ireland, was phenomenal coming from the bench. Let me just start by saying Manie Libbok has been falling out of favour. He got an opportunity against Portugal and he blew it. He totally blew it. He had 3 kicks to the post, missed everything again. Old Manie Libbok can't put it through. Sasha Feinberg Mongazulu comes from the bench every single week against Ireland. He doesn't miss a kick. This guy kicks it over from everywhere, guys. They compared Pollard's style of kicking and Mongazulu. Almost identical. Great technique, kicks through from all over. And this young man is definitely something special, because what he's really, really good at is broken play. His ability in broken play to hit the gaps. He reminds me a little bit of Bowden Barrett in that way as well. Like when he sees space to run into it, but he's got a blinding step to him, and his offload ability to still get, when he runs into space in broken play, very much an All Black style of running in broken play. He's really, really talented. Finds space, and his offloads. He got a ball away to Makazolo Mampipi in this game against Portugal. He had quite a few phenomenal breaks. There was one instance where he kicked a 50-22, guys. It was a torpedo kick from his 50-meter line. Bounces perfectly into the 22, 50-22. Young guy comes on you immediately every single time for the last 3 games. When that guy comes off the bench, doesn't matter if Pollard's playing, Manie Libbok, who's playing. When he comes off the bench, he's brilliant. And he's played fullback as a stand-in for Willie Leroux in the last game, but he's actually a fly-off. Now, this guy's actually all of it. He's utility again, and that's why he will have favour with the Springboks. He's played centre, he's played fullback, and he's played... and his specialized position is fly off, and they will develop this guy on fly off because he's just too good to be wasting anywhere else. And now the question will start becoming is how long before he starts threatening Pollard for that starting position. But I've got to say at the moment, having him from the bench is such an impact player. That kind of tells you where Manie Libbok sits in the pecking order. It's not looking good for the guy, and his kicking is doing him no favors at the moment. So that was good to see again, Sasha Feinberg Mangazulu and how good he is. And guys, if I tell you a prodigy, someone for the future, this young boy will be a prodigy for the Springboks. Mornay van der Berg, they call him Krappie. It means that means crab. But he was so good when he came on as well. Scrum off, looking very good. Now starting to question Faf de Klerk with a Grant Williams there, and then now this guy coming up. Another young guy, very promising. Wouldn't put Prodigy there, but really promising. Guys, and then, I have to just mention Lucanio. I'm getting back into the mix. How good this guy was again. He's fit again, and he's looking good. And he's got to now also be considered in that starting lineup, because he was phenomenal to cover both centers when there was one center missing. And then they're taking nothing away again. Curtly Orange are fabulous. Mapimpi closing that space, to close that space between the centers, working together with Lucanio. They were great, covering the ball, kicking ball at the back, because Portugal was trying to expose it. Such a good performance by all three of those guys, and both the wingers scoring quite a few tries in the end. All great to see. Apalele Fassi on fullback was a bit, again, like, I don't know. He's okay, he's solid, but he's not doing anything great. With that said, there's a guy called Kewan Horn that came from the bench, another young guy, a really good fullback for the Springboks in the future. Maybe not the kicking abilities that you'd find from a lot of like a Willie Leroux, but definitely good otherwise. I've got to tell you, the Australians, I've got this winger called Filippo Doagunu. Now he's a Fijian player, but he's now obviously Australian. Great player. It's him that got the card in this game, which was unlucky, but very strong on his legs, lightning fast, great player. How talented this guy is. So Fraser McWright, another guy that's standing out. And I mean, generally, just a combination of that team at the moment. The Wallabies are looking good at the moment under Joe Smith. Now, just looking ahead, what I will tell you guys when I'm looking at these teams, I do think that from a All Black perspective, picking a team, I think Razor will stick to maybe a Bowden Barrett coming from the bench. He might stick to that. He might bring Will Jordan from the start from the bench. He might stick to a Wallace Satiti from the bench. And the reason why he will do this is he knows if he's going to play a team like the Springboks with a lot of depth, and them also having serious impact coming from that bench. So he will probably try and build up his own bench that can have a serious impact, which I get. I just then have to question who's the starting guys and if they're going to have enough impact. Because just remember, the starting guys play 50 to 60 minutes and the impact's only for 40. So, 30, 40. So you've got to really be questioning that, how much impact versus a full game and the influence that the player will have. But I've got a feeling that Robertson is working on an impact team to bring off the bench, to also have a serious impact when they come on second half. He's definitely got the abilities with the forwards, definitely. But from a backline point of view, it's just who does he want to start and who not. But generally, I think the All Blacks should do well against Argentina. I think that one, I think that the Argentines is not that great. They've had, a France team that's not the French team that of all these new players. They've had a very poor Uruguay game. They really ran them ragged. Doesn't mean that there's not a lot of potential or a lot of talent in that Argentinian team. Those two Carrera brothers. There's a lot of Kremer and Montero. All the guys they're still really good players. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think here at home against the All Blacks they will be able to do it, because I think if the All Blacks sort out, it's just focusing mainly on that line out, which I'm sure they are right now, and then just more face type play. And if they start getting their flow there, the All Blacks is right up there. So they're not that far away. And I think these Argentinian team games, they really need to step it up now and play serious test rugby, phase rugby, get their set pieces right, everything through the game, so that you can say they're kind of starting to play closer to clinical type of game. And I think the excuses will get less and less as this Rugby Championship develops, to see them improve in those areas. For the Springboks against Australia, guys, I've got to say, Springboks, I don't think it's going to be one of those games where we can say the Springboks are going to win against Australia in Australia. I've got a feeling, I just have this feeling, because they've toured before, the Springboks are going to slip one, and this first game is going to be really close, but the Springboks might just come short. The only reason why I'm saying this is this Australian team looks good as a cohesion team. They've got the right players, the right mix. Joe Smith's got pretty decent guys coming off the bench. But it's going to take a serious effort for them to still beat the Springboks, because the Springboks have got so much talent coming off that bench. This Sasha Feinberg Mangazulu, your guys will watch when they play Australia. The influence that guy's got from the bench at the moment, it is pretty phenomenal. And there's the Jason Dixon that should be coming in the mix soon. There's a lot of players that's coming off the bench now that will be really good young players coming up. So it's still going to be a seriously big task for them, and not an easy one to beat the Springboks this year. Because the Springboks have got, with all those new players that they've brought in, I kind of feel almost a better mix than what they had at the World Cup. And as soon as they start holding on to possession and not making silly offload mistakes and knock-ons and playing as loosely, again, guys, I am on this, but if you want to play test rugby, you've got to kind of respect the ball, I think. Hold on to possession. If they start getting that right, and the same team plays together for 3-4 matches maybe, I do think that we can start seeing a very good Springbok team here. And but at the moment, I think with timing, Australia's got a shot, because they've just played a totally different team. I just feel Australia has been consistently building on the same team. The All Blacks have changed their whole team to test out new players. The Springboks have changed their whole team. Springboks do this most years. That kind of puts you a little bit in jeopardy when the other team has been playing kind of a similar type of team and building. And I feel like the Wallabies are building. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't put predictions out right now, but I'll just give my thoughts. But guys, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I was a bit more neutral on the way I looked at things. I thank you all for watching my channel. If you like this video, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.